pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council meeting is called to order. Following answers, roll call.
Mayor Ridenour.
Here.
Earl.
Here.
Ewing.
Here.
Hardin.
Here.
Knox.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Here.
Minutes of the previous meeting were read and approved. So approved. Fiscal officer.
$1,562,745.82 in all funds, $241,826.63 in the general fund.
Any additions?
No additions.
Okay. Bills were read. Resolution 16-11-1 was adopted on motion by.
Earl.
Yes.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
Ewing.
Yes.
Hardin.
Yep.
Knox.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes. All right, we'll go to the guest section. We've got Al Gill. Thank you.
All right. Just want to take a moment to recognize an individual, Al Gill, who's made major contributions to the Waynesfield Police Department in the village of Waynesfield. Al's a graduate of Waynesfield Goshen and owner of Vonderhaus Gill German Shepherds, which is near Minneapolis. He's retired deputy sheriff from the Allen County Sheriff's Office and former lieutenant and acting chief of the Walpock Police Department. He has trained and worked with all types of dogs that range from patrol to narcotics to explosives and even cadaver dogs. While he was an officer, he handled 5 dogs and has trained dogs for law enforcement in the private sector all over the United States and Canada. On September 11, 2001, Al and his explosives canine partner Charlie were called into service at the World Trade Center after their extensive experience doing bomb sweeps for President Bush before and after he was elected. Waynesfield area is very fortunate to have Al, his experience, and his business nearby. The police department's first canine Yukon and our current canine Hunter was provided to us by him. Without his generosity, we would be unable to have a canine program at a department our size. Because of this, I think it's fitting to recognize him here at the council meeting and to announce him as the Waynesfield Police Department's final Good Neighbor Award recipient for 2016. The Good Neighbor Award was established by the police department as an effort to promote community pride, generosity, helpfulness, and encourage positive relationships around our community. It's my vision to keep our community safe, clean, and inviting to all that may pass through. And there's no doubt that Al and Vonderhaus Gill shares that same vision. So it's my pleasure to present the Good Neighbor Award, a plaque, and a gift card to Al Gill. Congratulations. Great process. That. There is that.
Didn't expect anything. We just
You want to picture this? Or you want to take a picture?
Yeah.
we just always tried to help the community that worked in and lived in and stuff. So that's why we do it, and hopefully we continue to help. What are you running for, Fred? Problem. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan.
Suckers jumping around.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'm gonna split. No offense.
Good evening, Al.
So yeah.
All right, next guest is John Courtney.
Well, I think it's been about 5.5 years since the last time I was here. Some faces look somewhat familiar. But, you retained us about a year and a half ago now to prepare an electric rate analysis for you. Take a look at your revenues and expenses in the electric fund, and we're here basically to report on that analysis. Hopefully, at least council has a copy of the handout, and I'm going to kind of walk through the slides for you. As I said, actually, the last time I think I stood in front of this body was in 2011. We had recommended that you adopt a power supply cost adjustment, which you did, which is a good thing that you did, as your power costs obviously have increased since then, as you've seen in your adder. So with that, let me kind of walk through the slide presentation I handed out. Slide 2, the scope of services for the electric rate analysis basically breaks into these 3 items. The first is the revenue requirement analysis. Once we complete that, we take a look at your existing rates, and then lastly, kind of develop any rate adjustments that we think that might be recommended. Slide 3, revenue requirement analysis, basically falls into these 5 steps. The first is to project your energy sales, because energy sales are going to drive both your revenues as well as the majority of your expenses, because about 75% of your cost is power supply related, which is the next step. Once we've projected your sales, we then project your power supply requirements and costs. We actually lean a little bit on AMP for that cost projection, because obviously you're part of the Western AMP Service Group pool that kind of has a big impact on your overall cost. The third step then is to project revenues at current rates. First need to project those power supply costs to project your power cost adder. Fourth step is to project revenue requirements, or as I say, what it costs to operate and maintain the electric system here in Waynesfield. And then the last step is to determine an overall revenue adjustment that may be required to meet those revenue requirements. So with that, slide 4, you can see based on historical sales, which have been fairly consistent year in, year out, we've projected your overall energy sales at just shy of 7,400,000 kilowatt hours on an annual basis. And you can see obviously the majority of those, 90% or so roughly, or more than 90% are actually in the inside sales. Outside is about less than 10%. Slide 5, as I said before, we project your power supply requirements and cost. You've got about 12% losses. You sell about 88% of the kilowatt hours you buy. And so you'll see that the figure shown on this slide is a little higher than what you saw in the prior slide to make up for those losses, which is basically things like street lighting or other unbilled services within the community. Again, those figures out on the right-hand side, the projected average price per kilowatt hour really come from AMP. We multiply those times the projected purchases, and you can see the corresponding dollar amounts there in the middle column. The next step then, now that we know what your power costs are going to look like, we can project revenues at current rates. And based on your current rates and projected for 2017, as the footnote indicates, with a power supply cost adjustment of roughly 3.3 cents, you can see what we projected for average revenues per kilowatt hour. In the middle column, we multiply that by the kilowatt hours for both inside and outside and come up with total dollars. You can see for 2017, we're projecting a little shy of $1 million, about $978,000 in revenue for next year based on the projected power costs. On slide 7 then, we project revenue requirements. And we took a look historically at what you've been spending. This actually reflects current staffing levels for personal services. We escalate most of these items at 3% for inflation. With the exception of the power supply costs, which obviously is, as I indicated before, comes from what we get from AMP. Debt service on your AMP loan, though, is a fixed number, the $16,500 a year, as well as the debt service on your Omega JV5 or the Belleville Hydro Plant down in the Ohio River, so that's about $7,500. We build in allowance for capital outlay, and then we credit against all those expenses other income. And on average, you get about $10,000 a year just in miscellaneous revenues that come in that are not directly related to sales. So we actually credit that against the other expenses. You can see for 2017, we're projecting revenue requirements of about $976,000, but that increases to a little over $1 million in 2019 You know, basically due to inflation as well as the power cost projections going up, so. So on slide 8, then is the last step of the revenue requirement analysis. We compare the revenues at current rates to the revenue requirement to see if you're getting sufficient revenues. And what we found is for next year, actually, it shows that you would your revenues would exceed your revenue requirement by about $2,400. But as we go forward into 2018 and 19, we can see that adjustment becomes a positive number, which means that your revenues now are not exceeding revenues requirement, and you need to increase revenues to meet those revenue requirements. So slide 9, with regard to revenue requirement analysis, our conclusions and recommendations are that the current revenues at current rates are not sufficient to meet your projected 2019 revenue requirements, and the revenues would need to be increased by approximately $11,300 to meet those projected revenue requirements for 2019. So pretty close, but just a little shy of what's projected. Any questions before we go on to talk about rates? All right, well, the next step then is to take a look at your existing rates, try to identify any concerns, and then develop any new rate adjustments. And with you folks, it's pretty easy to take a look at your rates because you only have one rate. It applies to all of your customers. It was last set in June of 2009. It's a monthly customer charge of $2.75 per month, regardless of usage, and an energy charge of 9.75 cents per kilowatt hour. Then obviously on top of that, as I said back in 2011, you did adopt the power supply cost adjustment. But you've not had an increase, to our knowledge, in base rates, which really results in an increase in revenues, net revenues, since 2009. So it's been a little over 7 years since the last real adjustment to the rates. On slide 12, I guess one of the things that kind of stuck out to us is that customer charge being $2.75 seems to be fairly low relative to what we typically see in electric rates, whether it be investor-owned utilities like AEP or whether it be other municipals. In fact, lately, probably 90% of the rate studies, electric rate studies we've been doing for municipalities, we've been recommending them to raise their customer charges or raise that fixed component of your rate. If you look back, again, about 75% of your cost is power supply related. 25%, which is basically fixed costs, things like labor and debt and capital outlay, don't change because of how many kilowatt hours a customer uses. But on the other hand, you look at your rates, you collect about 98% of your revenue through an energy charge, a variable charge, and very little, only a couple percent really out of that customer charge. So our recommendation would be, in order to meet that 2019 revenue requirement, would be to increase your customer charge by 75 cents each year over the next 3 years. That would get you to $5. By the way, St. Mary's just raised their customer charge to $10, and Minster, about a year and a half ago, started the process of increasing their customer charge to $20. So, and where we've done cost of service studies for those communities, we find that customer charge, you could probably justify about a $20 or $25 a month customer charge, just because of the amount of fixed cost you have. I'm not suggesting that you go that far, but this would get you to basically $5. Every customer would just see the same increase of 75 cents a month, starting in 17 and then again in 18 and 19. So,
John, just to clarify so they understand the customer charge, we're talking about the meter base, if you didn't know that, the 250. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, just a fixed charge you pay. If you use 0 kilowatt hours, you pay $2.75, regardless of what you use. So that would be, I think that gets me to the question mark. So that would be our recommendation based on the electric rate analysis that we prepared for you, would be to increase your customer charges over the next 3 years by 75 cents a month each year until you get it to $5. That actually will get you a little more revenue than you need in 2019. Probably would carry you over 2020 if we were to extend that out. So chances are they'd probably get you about 4 or maybe even a little bit beyond that years. So. I'll try to answer any questions anybody's got.
So that would just leave our cost per kilowatt the same
That's
plus-
correct.
Plus the,
The customer charge would go up.
Well, we're just talking about the,
Well, the 9.75 would stay the same right now. Now, one of the other things that Fred, we did talk about is whether or not, in addition to making the change in the customer charge, whether or not you want to roll some of your power cost adjustment into your base, that 9.75 cents, and get that adder down closer to zero. That would be an option to you. It wouldn't necessarily increase revenues, but it would,
Can I speak to that
You
real
say
quick,
that.
John, just because they've been prepared to consider that, and it's
Okay.
actually in the ordinance. We talked about our rate being 9.75 for all that time, and we have a PCA which has brought it up to almost half of your bill. In order to get that, and we talked about when we implemented that, whenever the PCA got to a certain margin that we wanted to reconcile that back, the way to do that is to increase the actual rate and bring that back to zero. And that's in the formula that we're proposing for you to consider, and I want John here to be able to explain it, to help me explain it. But what we're saying is if you want to take that PCA back to zero, to do that, we would increase 9.75 to 13 cents. But if you paid $100 for 100 kilowatts last month, by doing that, you would still pay $100 for 100 kilowatts next month. It won't change the bill. It will move the PCA from what its number is to zero, and then bring up the base charge. Now, to make that work, we have calculated the PCA based on a 6-cent calculator. That has to get changed to 8.25, I think.
no, actually, it's got to be changed to that without loss. You got to take into fact losses because you've got in the formula a 12% loss adjustment.
Okay.
So it won't be quite that number.
Well, anyway,
Yeah,
you
but we
you
can give you
understand.
what that
So I'm
number is.
explaining how the principle is, so I want John to be able to answer any questions to help you better understand what that is, because that's what the ordinance is saying, because based on that recommendation, because it's been a request, the way I'm understanding, to get the PCA back to zero, and what that would do is mean the
Well,
rate would have to
the
change.
residents understand their bill. The PCA, they don't understand, and that's the part that's making them irritable, okay?
very hard to explain, and it's
Right.
simple as
It-
pie, but you just can't get that.
Right. They just like, oh, my bill's only this much, but then what's this, We just need to make this
But if we do
kind of
that,
disappear into the,
if we bring the PCA back, it won't go away, because it still needs to be in
Right,
there in case
right.
our rates go up.
right.
And-
But to bring that back to zero means to go from 9.75 to 13, I think is the number.
Well, it's your choice. I mean.
But I mean,
Yeah.
to get that back to zero is what we talked about.
13 would basically, we'd be rolling roughly 3.25 cents into the base rate. That would take your adder, your base power cost would have to go from 6 cents actually to 9.25, but it's not quite that number. Again, you have to adjust that differential for losses.
Okay, so this is what we proposed
Okay.
based on the information you had sent me. And so, but I wanted you to be able to ask him any questions to help you understand.
That would scare me a little bit to basically do away with the PCA or bring it back to zero and make the bills that high, because what if the bottom drops out of the electric market, which we know it's not, but I mean, then we'd still be hammering people.
Well, we're gonna keep the PCA for that reason, we have to, because it,
Yeah.
Right, at zero, but what if it went the opposite direction and we're charging everybody 13 cents a kilowatt and
if our rates went cheaper, our costs
Right,
went cheaper,
exactly.
they get a credit.
get a credit?
Yeah, it goes negative.
It goes negative, they get a credit. So it's not like we collect on that, I mean, you actually get a credit. When we started the PCA, there was a credit built in the parentheses. It's- The big thing with the PCA is make sure that we don't go bankrupt, because we have a rate here and there's a spike in the cost that we can't recover it.
Last time I figured my kilowatts was 14 cents, but I didn't take the 275 off. I just took how many kilowatts I used by my bill, added the PCA.
And most
and my-
people do,
And it was a little over 14 cents. I thought, whew.
A little over 13,
a little over 13.
and I took the 275 off.
But the biggest complaint that we've gotten is that now that the PCA has grown to this amount, they don't care for that. They don't mind, And if it's
The
not
bill's gonna be the same.
separated like
The
that.
bill will be the same.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
That
bill's
just won't-
always
right,
gonna be
You
the
won't see
same.
that.
You just won't see it
Yeah.
separated.
yeah.
But not to lose sight of the recommendation of them, for us to not to operate in a negative after this year. They're saying the way to generate that revenue is just increasing by 75 cents our meter cost
Per year.
per year, per month, per year, for 3 years.
Right.
And that's in the ordinance too, but, not to jump around, but I want to be able to have John answer any of these questions. So John, how would this,
Yeah, that works. I mean, basically what you're doing is you're rolling in 3.25 cents, but you're really adding 2.9 to the base. That differential is that loss differential that has to be factored in. So that should work out to the same number. Yeah.
this should work out to the same? And that would go, in other words, in order by using, from 9.75 to 13, and then increase the meter charge. So, and this all starts in 17, is what they're recommending,
Okay.
is what, to start effectively January.
So the only change a resident or business is gonna notice in the amount they spend is the extra 75 cents a month for the meter. The rest are already paying. That's what it boils down to.
Is that correct, John?
Yes, the $2.75 would be what the net effect on their bill, when you add all the components together, that's correct.
Sounds good to me.
Any other questions for John? Well, I'd like to thank you with appreciation for everything Courtney has done for us. John, I guess I should say.
Well, Scott would have been here tonight, but he had another appointment. If you have any questions, certainly give us a call, or I've heard give us a call. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, John.
Do you wanna have any more conversation on that topic before we move on?
What the, just to kind of put it out there, I don't know if this is the right time to do it or not, for consideration. What we did was we proposed it as an ordinance, and the attorneys prepared it to make it be able to be effective in January. They recommended, doing it as emergency, but also by being able to present it in November, you could even wait until the December meeting and pass it as an emergency. That way that gives you time to talk about it, look at it, but it would be good if we essentially wanted to get it effective in January, is to at least take action on it initially.
Right.
But that is if you're willing to consider it. Now, that's before council.
Good night.
Thank-
Thank
thank
you.
All right.
Well, I kinda like to do things while it's fresh on everybody's mind, and talk about it and, decide what direction we wanna try to go in, and if that is the direction, then move forward on it, get something in place, and
I imagine the price of meters have went up since '09, huh?
What hasn't?
Well, one of the things he told me is that across the board, nobody's charging $2.75. I mean, like he's saying, even Minster and them are charging as much as $20 for that monthly fee, and that's where you make up that difference. So I'm very encouraged to realize that with their analysis, the long and the short of it, even if we didn't do anything with the rate change, we're gonna pay that, but in order to move it in a positive direction, is only a 75 cent per month per customer over, once a year for 3 years, at $5, over a 3-year period, that's to raise it to a total of $5, it's only increasing it, what is that, $1.75?
Yeah.
Or,
Two and a quarter, over 3 years.
yeah, so, I mean, that's encouraging to realize that, 75 cents per customer per month, once a year increase, so,
And that is actually the only increase.
that's the only
Because
increase,
you're already
and that will
paying.
allow us.
Yeah.
But we do have to remember, we have a requirement, now, of course, he's saying in 17, we'll meet that threshold, but immediately 18 we won't. And we have contracts in place that we have to maintain a certain margin by contract, and we would be in violation at that point if we're not maintaining that margin too. So, well, it's not, I take that back, that's not in the same application because the power cost will cover that. I think the margin, but we will start operating in our reserves in a negative. So I'm speaking in there, sometimes you get them all confused there, but we will start operating in a deficit in 18, essentially.
Well, I don't know if any of you had to explain the power cost adjustment. Like Dick said, it's very hard to explain because most people don't want to hear it, even if you do explain it. So that's why I'd like to see something done that kind of shrivels down to nothing again, and we kind of start over. It's a good thing that we put that in place.
Otherwise, all those revenues would have been losses.
Yeah.
Because as we talked about there back in 11, I think when we had them initially start doing the study, based on contracts that are in place, they're increasing as we go forward, just like everybody else's. And we put 20-year contracts in place, and so we knew that come 16, 17, and so forth, our rates were going to increase, where typically we were paying $60 a megawatt or $6 a kilowatt on an average. We'll be paying somewhere between 80 and 90 in 18 and 19. But it averages out based on all of our portfolio, but the reality is that power cost is going up.
Typically, we would have, in years past, added, you can remember, Dick, we'd add like ½ a cent or a penny, every 2-3 years. Okay, we went a long stretch at the same amount, so the amount we have to increase seems larger, but actually not.
And had we not had the PCA, we'd have been raising it right along.
Yeah,
By law, I mean, we just had to.
yeah.
Because we've been operating a deficit.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I had a $140 PCA here a while back, and I'll tell you what, I was having a hard time explaining that to myself.
Because as soon as you say, what is this?
Well, new refrigerator, new freezer, knocked 1,400 kilowatts off mine the first month, so I guess it just needed that boot in the butt,
It did.
Yeah.
Tell that to people. Because when I get these big complaints about these things, they don't want to hear that it's a refrigerator and the seals out of them and them type of things, but that's
Man, mine were
real,
both
that's real
nice.
stuff.
Looked like $1 million. I mean, no seals. I mean, it's perfect, everything. It just was running all the time.
Age, just age is things, absolutely.
And I couldn't hear them. I'd have to get down and lay my ear up against it to hear it because I'm hard of hearing, Man, that thing is running. And every time I go by it, it'd be running. That's it. New one.
But we really got a lot of complaints about September, because remember the heat wave we had in September? Well, nobody ever used air conditioning in September like they did. And we had major complaints because they wanted to keep that temperature,
Is that when it was so high?
but that wheel was buzzing.
Okay.
And I went back and I'd have to go back into their records, see what they used in the same month last year, and there was a big discrepancy. Some of them as much as 1,000 kilowatts.
Yeah. Jerry showed me what mine was the year before and the year before that, every month. And, yep, it's creeping up on you. Something's not right.
So the 8.9 is equivalent to the 13.
You do all have a copy of that in front of you. this language is from John. I mean, the attorneys put it in an ordinance form, but this was,
You don't have it?
we
I
didn't,
don't think so.
Did you lay them out here, Tom?
I think I gave you a copy to do that, but I'll take the, that's me, that's on me.
Fred, are you talking about the proposed ordinance? Fred, are you talking about the proposed ordinance?
Yeah.
Look at paragraph 2, where you're talking about the rate increase. Got in there January 1/16, shouldn't it be January 1/17?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, we just
Yeah.
voted for that.
You go back and show that tomorrow.
I sure will. I'll be the first thing I hit him with tomorrow.
I think he's a person to detail.
That means we got a lot of catch up to do then, That's right.
But what I was gonna say is this language, that's why I asked John to look at it. This is exact language as far as the paragraph of the formula that he sent me. Then I sent it to the attorneys to put it in ordinance form. But as Mr. Reese alluded to, January, in paragraph 2, it should say 17.
I found it.
My bad.
He actually has it written on his emergency, so we just need to suspend the rules.
Yeah, if you wanna do it now.
And this is just my recommendation, since I'm gonna have to field some of these phone calls. The more notice we can give the residents and let them read that, the better it is. Just throwing that out there.
So are you saying have a first reading this month, and then go ahead and pass it as an emergency in December?
If that's what they, or we can do
And then
it
it would still be effective in January, if
Yeah.
that's what council chooses.
And that gives people a chance to
Ask questions.
review it and ask questions before you actually.
Sway your official final vote, all that good stuff. But just remember, if we don't, down the road, many years down the road, if we don't pay the bill and they turn us off, we're gonna resurrect you and point that out.
I'm still gonna be here.
So the power cost adjustment now takes off at after 6 cents, after we pay 6 cents.
Say that again, Dick. What's that now?
The power cost adjustment kicks in after the village pays past 6 cents a kilowatt for it. And that will jump to
Well,